Hello all, welcome to another session on machine learning. I'm a senior machine learning engineer and a guest faculty at BITS Pilani. If you like my work, please do subscribe and share it with others. Grab a cup of coffee and let's get started. So in last two sessions, we discussed basics of machine learning and data science, and we also discussed two ML problems. One was classification technique, and we did this classification technique on top of MNIST dataset. And then we discussed another technique called as regression technique, and we did this on California housing prices. These two data sets are freely available, and in second video, we also discussed some of the techniques related to data cleaning, pre-processing, data analysis, and we also briefly discussed feature engineering, feature generation, and feature selection. So yeah, those were some of the important concepts and techniques that were discussed in the last two videos, and we did all this while we have been using scikit-learn to apply all those machine learning algorithms which are available, and then we applied those machine learning algorithms on these data sets, and depending on the use case, like whether it was a classification technique or whether it was a regression uh, requirement, we applied the machine learning algorithms from scikit-learn, and we did that. All this while, like, we directly use the machine learning algorithms which were there in scikit-learn. And I mean, the basic idea was just simple. You create an object of that particular algorithm, and then you apply that fit method. You call that fit method, which will fit your data on that particular machine learning algorithm, and then you finally predict. That is how we have been doing so far. Till now, we have not discussed how these algorithms work. Okay, so in today's session, we will be discussing how actually these algorithms are working, like what is the science and what is the maths and idea behind all these algorithms. So we will start with a very basic algorithm, that is linear regression. Okay, so this linear regression is not something which is new. Even when this machine learning was not there, lot of people like who used to do data analysis, they used to do this linear regression. Okay, now first of all, let me again, although like these concepts had been discussed in our previous sessions where we were discussing California housing data set, so there, like, we have already covered what a linear regression is. So I will just give a brief here. So linear regression, uh, when your data is linearly dependent on some of the features, or maybe to make it simple, let's not take multiple features. Let's assume that there is just one feature, as in like there is a X value and there is a Y value. Okay, now for given like X and Y values, like depending on your data, for given X and Y value, if you plot that on a two-dimensional space, you will see some straight line, something of this sort. Okay, so if this is your X and this is your Y, and if you plot your data, you will see a straight line, something like this. Okay, so we will try to do all these things. Like, I will show it through code. We will generate some data. We will not be using any particular data today in this session. We will generate our own simple data set, and then we will try to understand all these algorithms and the maths behind all these algorithms. Okay, so when you have your data, something like when you, for a simple use case, let's say we just have two-dimensional data, as in like X and Y, and when you plot that, you will see something, this kind of straight line. So usually this line is given by equation Y equals to mx plus c, where m is the slope of this line and c is y-intercept, at like what point this line is cutting y-axis, that is your c, and m is the slope of this line. Like slope of, we know, if you draw something like this at any point, any given point, if you want to calculate the slope, this angle is theta, and this is, let's say, p, and this is b. So slope is given by tan theta, which is equals to p by b. Okay, so that m represents this tan theta, which is equals to p by b. Again, like when I will be taking some sessions on calculus, there I will be explaining these things in a little bit more detail. But for now, you can just assume when you are saying it is linearly m, we will be more interested in calculating this value of n, value of m, that is the slope. So to calculate this, let's assume that c is not there. All we can do is we can say m equals to y by x, right? Now, if this y is not a series, or maybe like it's some kind of matrix, okay, so there are rows and columns, and for every particular row there is one output which is represented by y. So this is x and this is y. Now what I will do is, instead of normally like y by x, we can say y by your this x vector. So here this x is, you can assume as it is a matrix. So traditionally how it was done, you can say that this matrix x, if you calculate the inverse of this x and you dot product with y, that is what will give you the m value. So traditionally this is how it was done. We used to calculate the inverse of the matrix, and then we did a dot product with y, and we were calculating the value of m, and that was kind of our hypothesis. We assumed that, okay, the data is falling on this particular line, okay? Now, there were some limitations to this. Number one, for a given matrix, you cannot calculate inverse for every given matrix, okay? There are some issues with that. So, but some of the statistical software which are available in the used to calculate something called as P inverse, that is pseudo inverse. Instead of directly calculating the inverse of the matrix, they calculate pseudo inverse of the matrix, and then you do a dot product with y. So all these things are possible, still possible. And also, because of calculating this inverse of the matrix and doing a dot product with the matrix, the time complexity of this entire operation is big O of n to the power 3, that is n cube. Now, if your data set is quite huge, it's quite big, then this approach will not be scalable because it is n cube. Instead of that, in simple terms, I mean, I'm not making a statement over here, but just to make an analogy and to help to you understand this concept, you can assume that this machine learning technique is a greedy approach, greedy method. It will first take whatever it feels is most optimal, and then next step it will take whatever it finds the most optimal. So basically it is kind of optimization problem, and it will take a greedy approach kind of thing. If these terms are new to you, please just go through or maybe refresh a little bit of data structures and algorithm, and it will be kind of clear. Okay, so this was how traditionally it was done, but there were a few limitations to that. Now in machine learning, how it works. Okay, first of all, before that, before going to machine learning method, let's talk more about this traditional method itself, because that will be kind of, we will be taking the same concepts further, and we will be discussing some concepts in machine learning. So let's say either you are doing it with traditional method or you are doing with machine learning method, you got a hypothesis, something this way, all right? Like this is your hypothesis. This particular line which is there in red is your hypothesis line. Now I want to see how good my hypothesis is, like how much accurately I was able to identify this particular hidden behavior of this particular data. So to do that, what we usually do is, like, these are all these blue dots are your actual points, and this is your hypothesis line. This is what you are going to predict. So what you will do for this, for every blue point which is there, you will calculate distance. Like you will calculate all these distance. Okay, you will calculate all this distance. These distances are calculated parallel to y-axis. Okay, so these distances are calculated and then they are added together. So that is going to give you the error, like what error your hypothesis is making on the actual data set. Now there is one point to note here. See, some of the points are below the line and some of the points are above the line. That means the points which are below the line, it will be negative, and the points which are above the line will be positive. Now if I try to add that, there will be some points which will negate each other, or maybe it will not give me an actual error that I'm making. Even the negative error that I'm making is also an error for me. So I just want the absolute value. So for, let's say, all these blue points are represented by Y, and all these points which will fall on the red line is represented by Y hat. So I can say Y minus Y hat, or Y hat minus Y, anything. I just want the absolute value of this. Okay, so when you calculate the absolute value of this is called as mean absolute error. Okay, so so in my second video I had briefly discussed about all these things: mean absolute error, mean squared error, when to use mean absolute error, when to use a mean squared error. So just go through those videos, refer those videos. So the point here is, I want absolute error here. Now, the other, like, second approach is, you can square this entire thing, Y minus Y hat whole square. Now, when I'm squaring it, it is going to be absolute. Square is always going to be positive. But I'm also saying, when my hypothesis line is deviating more from the actual data point, I'm going to penalize more, because more this value, Y minus Y hat value, or the magnitude of Y minus Y hat is, its squared will be even more. So you will giving more error value to that thing. So when you want to penalize your hypothesis, when it is deviating more from the actual value, then you use mean squared error. But here we need to be careful, because when you have a lot of outliers in your data, then mean squared error will not be a right thing to do. Because when you have outlier, or your sum of the point, let's say this is one outlier for me, or this is one outlier for me, all my data points are falling on this line, nearly falling on this line. But because of these outliers, my error calculation will shoot up. So I need to be very careful. Either I will just remove these outliers, or maybe go for a mean absolute error. So when I say mean absolute error, I'm not squaring the terms. So I'm not going to penalize it more when there are outliers. Okay. So once this is done, but this is not actual thing, right? If you take the absolute value or you square it, these are not the actual thing. We are more interested on what error one particular data point is making. Here, when the number of data points increases, your mean absolute error or mean squared error will also increase. So we are more interested in average of this whole entire thing. So what we will do is, we will take summation of this entire thing and then divide by n. Okay, divide by n. So here n is the number of data points that you have. Okay, this will give me the average error made by my hypothesis. Okay, so this is how we do. Now, when we apply machine learning, I'm just talking about one important algorithm right now. I'm talking about just one important algorithm. And this algorithm which I'm discussing was kind of the first idea in this entire machine learning and deep learning world. Okay, so when we start learning machine learning as a beginner, so we always start with machine learning techniques, that is shallow machine learning techniques, and then we go for deep learning techniques. That is how we usually do, because machine learning techniques are easy to understand, and deep learning a little bit requires more practice, or maybe more intuition and insight is required. But you will be surprised to know this deep learning concepts were introduced first. They were like, the invention of deep learning algorithms and deep learning idea was first presented. But as I discussed in some of my lectures sessions, where, like, I mentioned, all these machine learning algorithms and deep learning algorithms are hungry for data and are hungry for compute power. And initially we did not had that much compute power, and we did not had that much data. That's why deep learning algorithms failed. It couldn't make a success. And then they started following this shallow machine learning algorithms, or shallow learning techniques, which is that comes under this machine learning under the machine learning area. And deep learning was, I mean, deep learning was a clear example of invention before its time. Okay, the people were not ready, or the technology was not ready to accept that. So we are here discussing one of the important algorithm. Like, this is the only algorithm which will be used throughout in deep learning, but so with just little bit of variations. So the one which I am discussing here is called as stochastic gradient descent algorithm, and there are just little bit of variations in this stochastic gradient descent. Like, we have something called as ADAM and ADAGRAD, RMS prop. These are some of the optimization technique that, I mean, the idea remains the same. It is the same gradient descent, but how the optimization will happen will usually differs a little bit, slightly it differs. That's why they have a different name. Otherwise, the same algorithm will be used everywhere in deep learning. So the same algorithm we are discussing in machine learning lessons, and then we will see like what other algorithms are there. And then gradually, like when we start the deep learning sessions, then it will be more clear. All right. So here we were discussing this error calculation that we are doing. We want to minimize this error. So in my uh, previous sessions also, I have been mentioning this, that there is always a cost function associated. There is a error function that is associated with your machine learning model. And then you try to optimize, you try to uh, optimize that cost function or error function. And the requirement is whatever cost function or error function that you have, it should be convex. It should be convex and differentiable at every point. That is what the requirement is. Now, if you check this particular equation, the entire thing. Now, what is here? This y hat, that is what we are going to predict. You can think that this is some function of mx plus c kind of thing, because this is what we are going to predict, right? Y is anyways constant. These are the data points in this space, and y hat is mx plus c, and we want to have a efficient m value. We want to compute a efficient m value, or some optimal m and c value, such that this whole error function or this error is less for me. Now, if you see this, now if you just expand this entire equation, it will be some function of x square, right? It will be some function of x square. Now, because this is a quadratic function, and you will also see that this is going to be a convex quadratic function and convex, and it will be something like this, right? Now, the idea here is this is my error function. So my goal is to reach this particular point. So my goal is to reach this point, because this is the point where it will have minimum error. Okay, now let's see. So I will be showing all these things, as in like I will be through graph and all our data set, and we will be plotting all these things, and I will be showing in this class. So now if you plot this error function, this kind of graph you will be getting, and our goal is to find this point over here. Our goal is to find this point. Okay, now what in machine learning, as I told you, it is a greedy approach. It is a greedy approach, and I mean, optimization technique and a greedy approach. So maybe you start with any point over here. You start with any line here. Maybe you start with this line. You calculate the error. Maybe when your hypothesis line is this, you are somewhere at this point. The idea is to gradually move downwards, gradually go downwards, and reach this point at some time. Gradually go downwards and reach at this point. Okay. Now, how we can do that? So we have our equation. We have our equation, and at any point, what we will do is we will take, let's say, this whole equation that we have. One second. This whole equation of that MSE, I will just write MSE over here. This whole MSE is represented by J. I can say dJ by d theta, or theta. You can just assume this is your M. All right. So for different values of M, how this J is changing. That is going to be slope of this function for any given point. What I'm saying, like I will start from any point on this graph, but your like initial value of whatever m that you had, you just say m minus dj by dm. Okay, so I'm saying gradually reduce the value of m by this, the slope, some alpha times the slope, as in when I say slope, that means in this direction, upward direction. And when I'm saying negative of slope, that means in negative direction. All right. So I'm saying decrease the value of m with some learning rate, like how big steps you want to take to reach this point. So there are some few things involved here, like based on your learning step that you are taking, that alpha value. You need to also fine tune and also select and choose a good learning rate. Otherwise, you will never reach over here. There are chances that it will overshoot and other things. Those concepts we will be discussing in our future classes. But just if you can just understand this and get an idea, it will be great. So you will gradually take steps to reach at this particular point. So all this while your dj by dm will be some positive value, and it will gradually start coming over here. Maybe just assume that it crosses this particular point and it goes here. So here at this particular point, your dj by dm will be 0, because slope of a line parallel to parallel to x-axis is going to be 0, right? Parallel to x-axis is going to be 0. So now for this particular point, slope is going to be 0. So for by some reason, like you reached here, now here what will happen? Slope will become negative, right? This whole thing will become negative and this will become positive, and so you will start moving again to this direction. So maybe at whatever point you start, you will finally converge at this minimum point. Okay, you will converge at some point at this minimum point. So this is what your stochastics gradient descent algorithm is, and this is how it works. Okay. Okay, so this particular example you might see in a lot of books and text. Okay, they usually explain stochastics gradient descent algorithm with this linear regression. I will just go a step further. I will be trying to explain this through some other cost function, not MSE, not mean squared error, but some other functions. So the idea here is, we know that this MSE is going to be helpful when we have a regression problem. Like when we have regression technique, then this MSE function is going to help. What if it is not a regression technique? For example, let's say I want to build a machine learning model which is going to classify whether the given image is of a cat or a dog. So it is always going to be 0 or 1. Let's say for dogs, I am representing it by 1, and for cat, I'm representing it by 0. So it is always going to be 1 and 0. So calculating MSE will not be very intuitive. So in such scenarios, we generally use a cost function called as cross entropy. So when we have classification techniques, when we are using classification techniques, these MSE might not work in classification, and we use a cost function called as cross entropy. Now, okay, now how this cross entropy works? Okay, this equation is let's put it in a different way, as in like this is not y, this is j. I'm just making these changes so that you do not get confused with that y equals to mx plus c equation. So this is not the equation of the plot or something. This is your cost function. So this is j, and this is let's say x, and this is x hat. This is 1 minus x and y minus x hat. That is, x is the one which you predicted, and your x is the actual value. Okay, so in classification problem, like in binary classification problem, we want to penalize our model more when the predicted is 1 while the actual was 0, or when the predicted was 0 while the actual was 1. So these are two of the scenarios where we want to penalize our model. Otherwise, simply calculate the error that you have made, right? So these are two scenarios where we want to penalize. Now, if you see this function, if you see this particular function here, let's say my let's first consider case one. All right. So in case one, I predicted 1. So if I predicted 1, log of 1 is what? The value for log of 1 is 0. Okay. Now x is, the actual value is 0. 0 multiplied by 0, this entire term will become 0. But if you check this one, my original value was 0, my actual value was 0. So 1 minus 0, this will become 1. And this log of 1 minus predicted is 1. So 1 minus 1 becomes 0. Now log of 0 is not defined. Log of 0, if you see in this graph, this is the graph for log x. Log of 0 is not defined. This is infinity. So here, for this particular case, my error will be infinite. It will be very large. All right. Similarly, for second case, now let's consider the second case. Now, if we go for second case, so here my predicted value is 0. So predicted value is 0 as in, and actual value is 1. So this will be 1 multiplied by log of 0, which is infinite. This whole term will become infinite. And here it will be predicted is 0. So 1 minus 0, log of 1, which is 0, multiplied by 1 minus actual is 1 minus 1 multiplied by 0, so 0 multiplied by 0. So this whole thing, the idea here is, in this scenario also it becomes infinite. So in both the cases it is becoming infinite. So that's the idea. In these two scenarios, when my model is making mistakes, I want to penalize my model heavily, otherwise simply calculate the cost function. Okay, so this is how this cross entropy works, because we are just interested in two classes, either it is positive class or negative class, or 1 or 0, that way. So no point in going with that entire MSE function and mean squared error calculation. So this is how the cross entropy function works. And now if let's analyze this particular equation to validate the 2 points that we mentioned earlier for our cost function. The one, number 1, it should be convex, and number 2, differentiable at every point. Now, why I am discussing this particular cost function, the cross entropy function? Already we have discussed that through MSE. The idea here is, when we learn this deep learning algorithms, there you will need to create your own cost functions. So based on like object detection, when you go for YOLO algorithm or RetinaNet or some kind of deep learning models, there these kind of simple loss functions or cost functions will not work. You have to create your own cost function for a different kind of cost functions that you might be using in deep learning. And there, understanding like whether your cost function is convex and differentiable at every point or not is going to help. All right, now let's break this entire thing. Now, if you break this entire thing, you will see here that every term here is multiplied by either x or 1 minus x. Now, x and 1 minus x is just going to, it will not hamper the non-linearity of the equation, right? It is not going to directly hamper the non-linearity of the equation. I mean, we can, so let's break this entire equation, which can be written as log of x plus log of 1 minus x, something like this, right? Now, if we go through these things, so these are, we will just see through all these examples. So yeah, so this, like if you plot, this is the graph for log x, and this is the graph of minus of log x. Now, simple analogy, right? Like if your graph is, if in 2-dimensional space, this is your graph, let's say y equals to x, log of minus x is equivalent to what? Minus of y equals to x, right? Now, if I want to plot this particular graph, minus of y equals to x, my graph will look something like this. Minus of y, for every x, y will be negative. So the y will be this. So my graph will look something like this. So basically, whenever I'm saying that if this entire thing is f of x, I'm saying minus of f of x, then the graph is mirror image on the x-axis, right? Similarly, when you have like f of minus x, then it's mirror image on y-axis. Okay, so this is the basic idea, and you can see here. Now you can see here. So this is the graph of log of x, and now when I'm saying minus of f of x, it will be mirror image on the x-axis. So this is mirror image on the x-axis. Now The second term in our equation was log of 1 minus x, right? So log of 1 minus x. Now again, if we check that, we have already discussed that the, okay, one second. Yeah, so the first thing is log of, so first is f of minus x, right? F of minus x, f of my, uh, f of minus x, this will be mirror image on the y-axis, right? F of minus x is mirror image on the x-axis, minus f of x, mirror image on x-axis, f of minus x, mirror image on y-axis. Now, when I'm saying log of 1 minus x, this whole graph, log of x was this was my f of x, f of minus x will be mirror image on y-axis. So this is like mirror image on y-axis, this whole thing. And because I'm saying 1 minus x here, not just minus x, I'm saying 1 minus x, I'm saying 1 minus x, what will happen? This will shift. Initially it was starting from here, it will shift by 1 unit, right? And it will start falling on this, like it will start passing from the origin. Okay, now, and if we take negative of this entire thing, that is again same minus of the first which we were doing. So it will be mirror image on the x-axis, right? Now, if it is, when it is mirror image on the x-axis, your graph will become like this. Now, these are my two final graphs, right? Minus of log x and minus of log of 1 minus x. Now, if we merge these two graphs, like if I merge this graph and this graph, I will get a graph something like this. Okay. Now, although it will look that at this point it is not differentiable, but when you just merge this and plot this graph, you will get a nice graph something like this. There will be this non-differentiability, it gets cancelled when you merge these two particular equations. Again, like you can just explore how it becomes differentiable at this point. Okay, simple continuity and differentiability, you can find out that this particular point, it will become continuous and it will also be differentiable. So your graph will look something like this. Now, this becomes the same stochastics gradient descent algorithm that we have discussed for our mean squared error, right? Again, we can start from any point on this particular cost function, and our goal is to reach at this minimum error point. Okay, that's our goal. Okay. So again, like when we were discussing linear regression, we mentioned that we can use traditional method or machine learning methods and other things, and we can do that. What if it is non-linear? If the data is non-linear, then what? Okay, first of all, traditional method won't work. Okay, ML with linear regression is definitely going to underfit, because although this is my graph, my model may form a hypothesis line maybe like this, or maybe something like this, or maybe something like this somewhere, but it is not going to completely fit something like this. It is never going to fit that, because it is going to be a linear equation, right? So those are some of the things where your linear regression will fail. Then what to do next? Now here we introduce some of the more powerful machine learning algorithms which are there, which can fit on more complex data set, something which is like non-linear and something. Okay, even in machine learning, you can use the simple linear regression that we have discussed then, and we can simply use that. And the idea will be to generate polynomial features, as in create multiple combination from the given x and y pairs, create multiple combination of x to the power n, x to the power n minus 1 multiplied by something, some for every combination of x you prepare, and then you train your model. Then, because it is now a higher degree equation, it will form like fit on any complex data set. But again, whenever we are going for this polynomial and other things, we will need to validate the power that we are going to select. We should make sure that we are not overfitting on the given data, neither we are underfitting on the data, right? Okay, there is one important concept here, Taylor and Maclaurin series. I mean, I feel that this is very important. One of the mathematical concept which I think you should explore. Anyways, like when I take calculus sessions and some of the math sessions, there I will be covering this thing. But these are some of the things where you will get that intuition, like how this polynomial curve is going to fit this complex data set. Okay. Now there are other powerful algorithms for nonlinear data. First of all, this is not. Uh, I mean, logistic. I mean, some of the other algorithms which are there, and again, I will be discussing all the mathematical concepts more in detail in future classes. Here, I was mostly wanted to discuss linear regression and stochastic gradient descent algorithm, but now I will be giving overview of all the other algorithms that we have in machine learning, and then gradually we will deep dive in every algorithm, and we will do more problem solving using those algorithms. All till now, all this while, like the two use cases and the problems that we have discussed there also, we I mean, I explained the concept and then I just hand coded those entire thing. I will be sharing all those codes on some GitHub or on the description of our videos. From there, you can just download and get those code, and you can start practicing. But these are some of the other algorithms which are there. So the one popular one is logistic regression. This is usually used for binary classification. There is another version of this logistic regression called as softmax regression, which is used for multi-class classification when you have more than two classes. So the idea here is we apply something called a sigmoid function. So you can assume this as a linear. So although the term regression, but this is for classification. This algorithm is used for classification. And why this term regression? Because here, if you see, I'm applying to that entire data set, I will be applying some kind of sigmoid function on top of that. And here, this is just not x, this will be some linear equation. Just like your linear linear equation was there, y equals to mx plus c, something similar, you will have something over here. But to that entire thing, you will apply a sigmoid function. So what this sigmoid function does is, for any given value of c, when I was using y equals to mx plus c, for a given value of x, my y can take any value. It is unbounded. It can take any value from positive infinity to minus infinity, any value it can take. But if you take this equation, if you apply for any value, any y value that you get, you apply the sigmoid function, you will see that your whole data will be scaled from 0 to 1. I mean, your output will be scaled to 0 to 1. How it is happening? You can just check this out. So here, instead of x, let's say I put infinity. So when I put positive infinity, this entire thing e to the power minus infinity will become 0, because it is 1 by e to the power infinity. This whole thing is infinity. 1 divided by infinity will become 0. And if I put this negative infinity, so this whole thing will become 0. Now it will be 1 by 1 plus 0, which is equals to 1. Now if I put x as minus infinity, this whole thing will become positive infinity. This denominator will become positive infinity, and it will be 1 by infinity, which is equals to 0. So your output will be always in the range of 0 to 1. That's the idea. So when I'm doing a binary classification where one of my class is 0, my other class is 1, I can safely use logistic regression, because that is the output that I'm going to get, either 0 or 1, something in between 0 and 1. That's all. So that is how logistic regression works. There is a small variation in this particular equation for softmax regression, where you can do multi-class classification. Another powerful algorithm which is there is called as SVM, support vector machines. And this particular algorithm, so logistic regression and softmax regression, we know that this is used for classification. SVM, on the other hand, is used for both classification and regression, and it can also be used for outlier detection. Okay. But there are some limitations. There are some pros and cons of all these algorithms, and I will be covering those details in some future videos. Here, I just want to give a high-level overview and do a quick discussion with some of the important algorithms which are there in machine learning. Okay, so okay, SVM is used for both. Now, how this SVM algorithm works? There is something called as large margin classifier. Here in SVM, we use a loss function which is called as hinge loss function. Okay, all this while, like we saw MSE and cross entropy and other things, here we use something called as hinge loss function. More details we'll cover in future videos. So this hinge loss function, what it ensures, as in like, let's say your data is distributed in something this fashion, and if you try to separate it linearly, either it will form a linear line like this or something linear line like this. What hinge function will do is it will try to create boundaries between these data points such that between these boundaries, the perpendicular distance or the parallel distance between these boundaries is maximum. Okay, it will try to create hypothesis or create boundaries in a way such that this distance is maximum. Okay, and this is not just a line, it is a whole plane. It's a like two-dimensional plane you can think of, and this is how it will separate your data points, and this is how SVM works. Okay, and it uses hinge loss instead of all those MSE and cross entropy that I was talking about. Okay, and again, SVM efficiently handles nonlinear data and can be efficiently used for classification and regression. It also uses like powerful kernel functions. We will be discussing about all those kernel functions. There is something called as gamma function, and there are some of the very popular kernel functions which can be used to get these, like what these kernel functions will do here, like we are seeing this separation of these data points through a straight line. When you use kernel function, this straight line will start forming nonlinear boundaries, something like this. So let's say something like this. Instead of a straight line, you will get a nonlinear boundary, something like this. So this is how kernel function works. Okay, we'll be discussing more about all these things. Another powerful algorithm is decision tree. Again, decision tree can also be used for classification, regression, and it can also be used for multi-output problems. Okay, it is a very powerful algorithm capable of feeding a very complex data set. Okay, one of the biggest advantages of decision tree is it can be explained and easy to interpret. All this while, like if this machine learning and deep learning, usually the deep learning, they call it as black box model, because what rules were identified or what rules were generated by your model, you will never know. How it is detecting this particular image is a dog or a cat, you might not, that you may not be able to explain that. But decision tree, on the other hand, you can easily explain that. So how a decision tree works, like internally it uses, in scikit-learn, it uses an algorithm called as CART algorithm. Some of the other libraries which are there for machine learning, something like PyTorch or other things, they even use ID3. So the difference between CART and ID3 is CART ensures that your so the whole data point, the data that you have, will be something like at every node you will have some kind of condition you can think of, and then there will be split. So and here also you will get a split, here also you will get a split, and this is how your decision boundaries are created. Okay, this is how when you're given data set, some decision boundaries are created, and these splits happen on something called as Gini. Some people call it Gini, some people call it Gini. So whatever, like Gini, impurity, or entropy. Okay, now the split happens on these two things, Gini and entropy. Now by default, scikit-learn will be this entire decision tree will be a binary decision tree. That is like we will have maximum of 2 childs for every node. Okay, while in ID3, in PyTorch and other libraries, you can use sometimes they also use ID3 where you can have more than 2 children. All right, and by default, scikit-learn also uses Gini, and if you want to change it to entropy, you can change it just by hand tuning the hyperparameter. And the Gini is fast compared to entropy, but entropy gives a more balanced tree. So these are some of the trade-offs and some of the things that we need to understand. And yeah, and once you have trained your model through graph, like decision tree, you can explain like how that decision was made, how the split was done through a tool called as GraphViz. Even like in my second video, if you saw, there was a variable which is already present in scikit-learn. No need for any installation. You can just use feature importance, and then it will give you like which feature was more important for making the decision. So that way, so here, like this node is most important, then these two nodes. So something that way. But GraphViz will give you, I mean, it is just one library which you can install, and then when you plot based on your decision tree, like after training your decision tree, if you plot it, it will give you a nice graph of something this short, where it will exactly tell you how the decision was made at every given node or point. Okay. There are some other advantages of decision trees, like it requires very little data preparation, does not require any scaling or centering of the data. Okay, and one problem here is it creates orthogonal boundaries. Okay, so orthogonal boundaries, as in like it will always create boundaries which are perpendicular to each other. All right, and binary children. So binary children maybe not a problem, but orthogonal boundaries is a problem, because when we rotate our data, let's say for any reason we just rotated our data or scaled to a different scale or something, our decision boundaries will change. You will when you train the model again, your decision boundaries will be different, will not remain the same. So it is affected by like the rotation of the data. Okay. Now this is how something it works, as in like for every depth you will, this orthogonal boundaries are created, and then separations are done. Again, these things I will be explaining through all this through code, and this is all that I was discussing there. We will just try to minimize Gini impurity and entropy at every node. Gini is faster, entropy gives you a balanced tree. Okay, by default in scikit-learn it is Gini, but you can change it through the hyperparameter. Then there are these ensemble learning, where like we have bagging, boosting, and stacking, where we have more powerful algorithms, as in like random forest trees or XGBoost, that we'll be discussing in future lessons, and we will be discussing more as in like unsupervised learning and dimensionality reduction as well in our future lessons. Now I want to quickly show you all these things that we were discussing over here, like how we can show that through code. So here I'm doing just some simple imports, pandas numpy imports, and now I'm creating. Now if you see here, I'm creating some data just like X. I'm taking 100 data points, randomly generated data points, then I'm multiplying by 10, because this randn function will give me normally distributed data which is in the range of 0 to 1. So I multiply it by 10 and scaling it so that my data will become from 0 to 10, something like that. Right now randomly I have generated 100 data points, and then for Y I'm generating just like giving a linear equation here. If you see here, simple, 3 multiplied by X minus 5. So here my M is 3 and C is minus 5. The same equation that I was explaining earlier. Okay. And then I'm adding some noise to this, because if I directly use Y equals to 3X minus 5, it will give me a all the data points on this straight line. But in actual scenarios, this is not how it will happen. You will not see such a clean data. Okay, otherwise there is no point of using machine learning now if you have so much clean data. So there will always be some noise, so I'm adding some random noise to my data. And finally, like if you see here, if I just run this particular cell, you will see the same output that I kind of presented in my slide. So this was my line. Again, now this is my traditional method to do it. Now if I just take a inverse and do a dot product with Y, I'm getting the value of M as 2.99. And if you remember, I was using Y equals to MX, that is 3X. And I'm getting through this traditional method 2.99. Not bad, right? Quite close. I'm getting the values. Now let's do the same thing through machine learning. So if I do this, so the general idea, we will import this machine learning class. We will create an object of linear regression, like we will import this linear regression class. Then we will create an object of that. We will use this fit method on our data set. We will fit our data on this particular algorithm, and let's see how it goes. Okay. So let me just run that. Now if I just check this, linear regression coefficient 3.022. Yeah, so my M value was what? It was 3. I'm getting 3.022, very near, right? And similarly, if you check the intercept, It is minus 4.84. My intercept was minus 5. I'm getting minus 4.84. Looks good. Now, from this same linear regression object that we created, and we have also fitted on the data, let's predict whatever X value was there. Let's create a new column, Y prediction, and predict everything. So if I predict everything over here, initially it was X and Y. Now I have X and Y predicted. Let's plot both of them. Let's plot Y and Y predicted. Okay. So this was my X, this was my X, and this is my Y predicted. That straight line that we were getting. All right. Okay, we'll come to polynomial data regression in a while. Let's jump to gradient descent algorithm. So here what I'm doing is, again, taking the same data points, okay, same X and Y values, and applying this linear regression and everything, and doing a plot. So this is the kind of graph that I'm getting. Okay, this is all good. And then what I'm doing over here is I'm calculating the error, like for every point from the original, like I'm just doing X of I, okay, for I in M for different values. So what I'm doing is I'm taking different values of m. Some I'm randomly, if you see here. Okay, so what I'm doing here is then I'm randomly taking because I know that my m value will lie somewhere between 0 to 10. So I'm taking some 1,000 points between -8 to 8. Okay, I have taken some random values of m, and for every m value, let's calculate what will be the error. Let's calculate for every data point, like X of I, that is for every m value, I am multiplying with my X. X is the data set that I had, and then I'm subtracting the predicted value, doing a square of it, and then dividing. So simple, that MSE error calculation that we were doing. Okay. Okay. Now some simple reshape and other things, and let's plot this. So this is my m, and this is the error that I'm getting. Now if I plot this, so this is the graph that we expected, right? Like for that entire cost function, this is the graph, the kind of graph that I'm getting. Now let's check the linear regression and coefficient 3.02 and 0.15. We have changed the equation here. We just simplified it a little bit. I mean, we removed that intercept C part of it. Okay, so now if you see this here, 3.02, this is good, and this is kind of 0, all good. Now let's run this whole thing. Okay, this is my error that I'm getting now. If I plot this, this is the point where I want to. So if what I'm doing here is, this is through traditional method, this is the linear regression coefficient that I'm getting. So I will I'm trying to plot this on this graph. So if I plot this on the graph, this is the point which I'm getting, and this is what we have been discussing. Okay, same thing. Let's just run through our cross entropy. Ignore this error, because some of the data points will be 0 and log of 0 is not defined. That's why this error is coming up. So log of x graph, this is the graph that we have. Similarly, this is the graph of minus of log of x. Okay, and this is the graph of log of log of 1 minus x, as that, and this is the graph of minus of log of 1 minus x. Now if I club both these two graphs, the y1 y2, if I plot both these graph, y, that is minus of log x and minus of log of 1 minus x, this is the graph that we will get. But if we add these two equations together, instead of y1 and y2, we just have y equals to this both added one, and if I plot it, this is the graph. The blue graph that you are seeing is the graph that you will get. Okay, and which is similar to a convex and differentiable at every point, where you can safely apply gradient descent algorithm. Okay, so that's pretty much it for today. I will be coming up with more sessions, and we'll be discussing more concepts related to machine learning and deep learning going forward. Thank you.